Okay, my friends, here it is. This Saturday morning live stream at the Garden Like a Viking headquarters, Zone 5/6, Northern Indiana. So, guys, let me know. Is this sound working? Do you got me? Do you hear me? Is it good enough? So, today is what we call false spring. Yes? So, the snow has melted now, and the negative temperatures have gone away. And the single-digit Fahrenheit temperatures have gone away now. And the sun's out, and the ground is thawed, and the snow melts. And then, so now everyone, and it's like 45, 50 degrees. So everyone's like, spring's here. And some people even want to start, planting stuff. But then, without fail, it will eventually get crushingly cold once again. For even just for a week or two, it'll go down into 5 degrees, a high of 5 degrees. So don't be fooled, guys. Okay. Okay. So all right, sounds good. Good. I'm glad. Thank you. Spawn Viking, Brian Airy, Meyer Lemon, Signal Loss, Big Will Dog in the Soil, Leslie Spites, Teats, Treats, yes, DLR, Sam Potzik, everybody in the house today. So, guys, are you excited for the upcoming season or what? If you are excited for the upcoming season, let me know in the comments what you're planting, all right? Watch the video that I made a few days ago where I go over all the things, most of the things that I am planting this year. And so let us know, if you're watching it after the fact, let us know in the comments. And then go through and read the comments. Comments of good videos like this and like the seed starting one I just did are really useful because people are given their firsthand experience. People that don't necessarily have a YouTube channel, they don't make videos. They just have their personal experience. They just have their personal experience, which is great. So you can read that in the comments and be sure to share. Okay. So we're getting super excited because it is time. I mean, it's almost time. All right. I'm going to make a video next week on seed starting on the homemade soil mixture that I like to use. And then I'm going to make one on a budget, sort of budget friendly, but really nice seed starting setup from start to finish. Because honestly, besides onions, there's nothing else you need to have started yet. Okay, you can be stratifying your parsley, but besides onions, don't even be talking to me about tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and stuff like that. Okay, unless you're in like zone 9 or 10, I don't even know. But if you're in zone 4, 5, 6, 7, don't even start. Okay, remember, it's better to wait a little bit too late than too early. Okay. So this is for sure. So let's see. Looks like it's okay. VA Green. Look at that. This is what they call fake spring around here, but it sure is nice to be out of the snow. Yes, same here. Yeah. Leslie Spites, going on week 3 and the celery hasn't germinated. Do not fear, my friends. Celery takes a long time. Okay. Do you have a heat mat? This is very important. This is primarily important for breaking the seed's dormancy. Okay, so a lot of people will start seeds and they don't focus enough on the heat. Seeds are so in tune with the heat, the temperature. And if you sprout, or if you grow microgreens, then you know this, because just 10 degrees difference, 5 degrees difference even, and it takes them several days longer to grow. You see it when you grow microgreens and sprouts. You can see how much the temperature affects the sprouting of the plants. So if you have limited space or limited resources and you just have one small heat mat, use the heat mat to break dormancy of the seeds. Okay, if you've got real limited space, you can even break the dormancy of the seeds on a moist paper towel inside of a plastic bag on the heat mat. So that way you can do a bunch of different things, on that one heat mat. Then once they break dormancy, you can plant them and they will grow. Okay. But the celery Number one, it takes a long time. 3 weeks, that's about right. And number two, you don't bury it. You have to surface sow it and just water it in, basically. So you have to keep it really moist. Celery is one of the few things that I use a humidity dome on. Okay, so those things, and you should be just fine. All right. Let's see here. Ooh, happy to run for me says, I'm in zone 9 and grow lots of celery, but in partial shade. They grow year round here in zone 9. Nice. Yes. DLR says, I grew celery last year for the first time, had no issues. Everyone said it was tricky, but it was a breeze for me. Yeah, the only thing that's tricky is keeping it evenly moist and keeping it from the blazing direct sun. All right, so celery is actually very easy to grow and very rewarding. Now, that is actually something else that I did start as well, just recently, some celery. All right, because celery is one of the few things that, one, it takes a long time to break dormancy and to sprout, but it also takes a long time to really develop. And so it's not like some of these other plants that will, got them. I'll show you my solution to these little flying insects. So the celery and the onions you could plant right now. And I did start sweet potato slips. Yes, I did. But if you watch my recent video, I made sure I went and got sweet potatoes from the co-op, the organic co-op, just the store where you eat them from. They're not technically for growing. But I've had such good success with those. And like I said in the video a few days ago, I bought all the slips last year from a certain company, which I don't want to name because I'm not 100% sure that it was their fault. It could have been my fault, definitely. And so I got scurf, that black stuff on the sweet potatoes. And so it's really kind of off-putting. The dark black color looks like rot, but it's not. It's they're not storing very well, and so I don't want it. You know, I don't want scurf, definitely, because they're not storing nearly as well as they normally would. So you'll read online that it doesn't affect their storage capabilities, but it definitely does, in my experience. It definitely does. So I'm starting all my own slips just like I used to do. Go to the organic store, get one, boom. And for several years in a row, I was just using last year's harvest to start new slips. I just didn't last year. Yeah. So Mario Lemon says, I bought slips last year too. It didn't work out, but part of it was me. My soil was too rich. Yep. And we know now that sweet potatoes like a benign soil. Yeah. Megan McGuire says, I had a very interesting observation this past year. I have a ton of cabbage moths. The tree kale I planted was totally untouched and was planted around lavender. Is lavender a moth deterrent? In my experience, it's because kale, that kind of kale is just so nasty, nothing wants to eat it. That's pretty much what that's pretty much what it is, really. It's so tough and so fibrous and can be so bitter. It's good for juicing, yeah, and you can make kale chips out of it and stuff, yeah. Kale is one of the most overrated plants in the garden, in my opinion. Although I do grow some, the dinosaur kale, for juicing, yeah. But even though it's so fibrous, you got to have like a real strong, you know, like a diesel-powered juicer in order to like really get through it, or chop it up real fine. But in my experience, lavender, I don't actually have enough experience growing lavender as a pest deterrent to be able to say that for sure. Can anyone help out, Megan? I mean, is there a correlation? I can say that in years past, before I found the BT, the Bacillus thuringiensis, which was a game changer, there is no more cabbage moth damage. I mean, there is, just forget about cabbage moths. Once you understand how to work with the BT, just forget about it. I mean, there's none. So it was amazing. And if you just see them flapping around in there, you just spray, just your brassicas, of course, because it will do the same to all caterpillars. So you just spray the brassicas selectively at night for 3 nights in a row, and no more moths, no more cabbage worm damage. I mean, immediately, it's done. And it's totally organic. It's just a strain of bacteria that infects the digestion, the stomach of the cabbage moth. It makes it so that it essentially paralyzes their digestion. Yeah, I've made this joke before, but it's like a Ozempic for cabbage moths. Yeah, it just paralyzes their digestion so they can't digest. So they're not hungry. And so they wither away and die, like right away, because they have to eat constantly. They have to eat your beautiful brassicas constantly. So now I can say, before I found that BT, that the kale, the lacinato kale, the dinosaur kale, I think is the tree kale. Yes, it's all the same. Was rarely touched. I mean, no matter what, the insects rarely touch kale. They just do, for whatever reason. Man, Argo Bargle says, I'm going to try lovage as a potential perennial celery alternative. Okay, I grew just a couple plants of lovage. I started them about 4 years ago, and I've been trying to get rid of the plant ever since. It is like overwhelmingly like a weed. I mean, it grows soup, and it's got really deep. I haven't tried digging it up, but I hack it off as often as I can, 4 or 5 times over the season, and it still just wants to explode because it gets like 4 feet tall, and it is so intensely celery flavored. I mean, just one nibble of one leaf tastes like the celery flavor of like a whole bushel of regular celery. I mean, it's almost like a celery essential oil. It's so concentrated. So that's why I was like, man, I'm not trying to be on celery like that. I want the celery for its juice. There's no way I can even stomach the juice from lovage. Now that's my experience. You might like that, but for me, it was way, way too intense, way too strong. But it does grow every year and comes right back. I mean, unfazed by 0 degree, temperatures and stuff. So yes. That guy Chris says, any suggestions for starting loofah seeds and growing them out in zone 7A? Anyone got any suggestions for Chris? Because I haven't actually grown loofah from seed before. Yes, DLR says, I have 2 lovage plants, 4 years going strong, that I grew from seed. I mostly use the fresh leaves. I'll try using the stalks this year. Yeah, it's so intense. Queen RB says, in my experience, getting organic sweet potatoes from the local co-op works best for starts. So I agree. Yeah, it's because whoever's growing them has already got them. They're already not going to have a bunch of gnarly defects on them. If you're getting slips from someone, you don't really know, especially if they're trying to, if they got a business selling slips, they could possibly just put it in there, get it out the door. They're trying to make money. So I get it. So they're not going to spend the time. They're not going to treat it with the same amount of love that you're going to treat your own. They're just not. And so that is definitely one reason that starting them yourself is much more, you can guarantee that you're not going to be getting the gnarly stuff on them. But see, the reason that I'm not naming the company and saying, these people gave me scurf infected slips, is because last year we had 10 weeks without a drop of rain. I mean, 10 straight weeks of blazing hot, bone dry, not a drop of rain. The grass turned crispy brown. I mean, it was like as if we're living in California or someplace where naturally it's supposed to do that, I don't remember that ever happening when I was a kid. I mean, maybe once or twice, but not like it was last year. I mean, it was brown, everything, crispy. and they didn't get water, because my garden was not set up to be out there watering for hours every day. It just wasn't set up for that. Like it is this year is going to be different. But so they went a long time without getting, they would wilt in the sun. I occasionally was able to water them, but the reason that I'm installing drip lines this year is because watering with a wand is good as a supplement to rain. Okay, because if you're getting rain, the soil's already got a certain level of moisture in it. All right, but if your only source of watering and you're in the ground is a wand, the hose, you're going to be out there a long time because it floods it so fast that the soil doesn't really have a chance to absorb it. It needs to be like a rain or like a drip, where it drip, 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 and it going in there and it's spreading out into the soil like that, and the roots can take it up. That's more what you want. If you just go out there and flood it with gallons of water, and then boom, it all like runs through the cracks and stuff. And my whole life was watering. When I was in Northern California growing like that, everything depended on watering, because there it doesn't rain once for 6 months, and you already know that. So if you don't water it, it doesn't grow. There's only what you irrigate is all that grows. So you have to have a plan for all of that. This is how I learned that drip lines are way more effective in the way that the soil absorbs things, the way that the plants absorb things. So if I was out there dumping a bunch of water, a watering wand on it, it evaporates real fast, and that's it. So so that's a long way to say that it could have been my fault as well, that they became susceptible to that. Yeah. Also, some practices that I'm kind of laying off of, as far as composting the exact plant material year after year in the same exact spot. I wanted to see how long I could push that. And, after 4 to 5 years in the same spot, you start having issues. You just start having issues. Okay. Of composting the same, in the JDOM style and stuff, just crop residue right in the same spot. So, we learn things as we go. We develop our system, we refine things, we observe it, we watch, and it's a process, an evolving process. So this year I will be having drip lines on everything, so everything will be evenly moist all the time. Natalie Dumont, I'm not fond of kale either. Yes, I know. Ooh, yeah, happy to run. Says, I like to grow kale, but it melted in my heat last year, so I grew more collards for greens here in the South. Guys, collard greens are amazing. Not only do they taste far superior to kale, in my opinion, any type of kale, the collard greens, in particular the Vates collard greens, much more resistant to powdery mildew. If you guys want to grow collard greens this year, which is one of the best greens for heat or cold, they can take extreme heat or very cold. They can take it until the days don't really get above freezing anymore. They're very cold hardy. You want to grow the Vates, Vates collards. I forgot to put that in my seed starting video, but the Georgia Southern collards I've grown for many years, and there comes a point in the season when they get powdery mildew. They just do, no matter what. They just get powdery mildew. And so there comes a point when, okay, do you want to dump labs on them constantly? You want to be dumping labs on all the time, or the sulfur or the wetting agent and stuff. I don't want to use that much stuff. You shouldn't need to. Aerated compost tea is all you really should need. All right. And so there comes a point in the season when the Georgia Southern collards would just get powdery mildew no matter what you do. Even if I planted some of, I even tried to make sure that it wasn't their age, because they've been in the garden for so long. I even started some up later in the season and then planted them in a different location later, and they still all got powdery mildew at the same time. So it's something, regardless of the age of the plant, you understand? So it's something that has to do with the conditions around here or whatever. But the Vates collards never got a scrap of powdery mildew all season for several years now. DLR says, kale's overrated. I give it away, freeze it, chopped up for winter inclusions into soups and curries. You know, if I knew more how to cook with it, or if I had been exposed to that in life, probably I would. I mean, I cook from scratch all the time, um, but I've not been to a place. I'll put it this way: I've never had a dish where I'm like, "Ooh, what is this?" And they're like, "It's kale." That's never happened. You know, I've always been like, "Oh, it's kale," like chewing on cardboard or sandpaper. Oh, kale. That's healthy at least, I guess, right? That's my experience with kale over the years. Um, yeah, Happy to Rum says, I wish I could grow Brussels sprouts. I keep trying though. They require a long season and they want to ripen in the cold. That's important. Yeah. Aaron Johnson says, you have to plant so much lavender for it to work. Nate's correct. BT all the way. Yeah, guys, once I found that BT, there is no going back. Yes, guys, thank you. Back. Hit the like button. Let us hit the like button. We want to, we're going to have a push now. We're going to really try and expand, and we're going to put out a lot of videos now here for this next foreseeable future. Okay. So help the tribe grow this year. Let's do it. Let us see. What's up, Stone Creek? Big West says, I confuse kale and kelp all the time. Yeah. Easy to do. Let's see. P. Morton says, birds have been pecking away at my brassicas this winter. I had no idea thrushes liked broccoli leaves so much. Yeah, you'll be amazed actually that a lot of damage that a lot of people think is slug or something is actually can be little birds. In particular, there is the goldfinches love um, Swiss chard for whatever reason. So I plant one Vulcan Swiss chard plant in the garden. That's all you really need. If you grow it right, I mean, the leaves are like this big, 2 feet long and a foot wide. I mean, real nice and beautiful and big. And the plant is nice and huge. So you really only need one plant, you know, unless you're really going to be eating it a lot. It's a good spinach substitute. I like it sauteed. I like it in certain Indian dishes and stuff. But every year, the goldfinches come in the morning and sit on top of the leaves and peck away at the Swiss chard. So all the leaves just have a bunch of holes in the top for whatever reason. They don't touch any other plants except for the sunflowers. All the birds love the sunflowers, especially the smaller sunflowers, like the Velvet Queen or the Sunset, Evening Sunset mix. They love those things. Are just infested with all different kinds of birds. Let's see here. Pepper Gardener. I've thought about using kale to ferment like cabbage, mainly because I haven't grown cabbage yet. That's changing this year. Definitely. If you're inexperienced with cabbage, I can recommend the Gloria Weinkuchen. It's a very, it's a quick, it's an easy, nice, tight heads, and they don't get super big, you know. And I don't just mean the heads. The heads can get pretty big. I mean the leaf spread. So like if you plant the Brunswick cabbage, which is my favorite for making sauerkraut in the fall time, I mean the spread on that thing is like 3 or 4 feet. I mean, as far as the big outer leaves can get like this. Watch the shorts I made last year where I show you the cabbage. The head's nice and big, but the spread is really big. So some cabbage varieties have their spread to head ratio is better for the garden, you know, for more compact spaces and more in the springtime. Because if your cabbages are ripening as it's getting hot, they don't really like to do that. They're going to stay starchy and just kind of not nearly as good as in the fall time. And when they ripen as the days are getting cooler, they're more buttery, more sugary, sweeter, just really more delicious all the way around. Yeah, Queen RB says, LOL, I grew a lovage plant that was like 6 feet tall. It was ridiculous. Yeah, they get super big. Okay, Big Will Dog, I'm glad that you brought that up, says Nate. I powder mosquito dunks that have a strain of BT that kills gnat larvae and put it into my seed mix. Have not had them since I started. Okay, that just gave me an amazing idea, actually, because I was going to, well, because of you guys, because I haven't done this before, but I'm doing it this year and recording all of the progress. I got some of this stuff. Okay, so it's this, but I could definitely powder it and put it into the seed mix. That is actually a great idea. I wonder if it would work like I want it to work, or if I should just make the tea out of it and water. But anyways, like last year, I got a bag of infested soilless growing medium from the store to add to my, or to start some new houseplants. And it has brought in a deluge of these tiny little insects that are not fruit flies. They're not, they're a particular type of gnat that I haven't seen. I don't really have a lot of experience with it. And they're infesting a lot of them. So I have heard from you guys and then did a little more research, and this is very common, to make a tea out of it and then water, or take some of the granules and sprinkle around the potted plants. That way, every time you water, some of the active material gets in there. So we will see, but that would make sense. I wonder how much is necessary, though. Big Will Dog, if you can respond, if I can see it, how much is necessary, though? Because I make my own seed starting mix. So I wonder how much I would actually have to use, you know? If it's just a tiny little bit, or if you got to use, I don't know. Let's see. Whoa. Jay Dixon says, I am very serious about loofah taking over hundreds and maybe thousands of feet of the garden. Be very prepared. Wow. Is it that serious? Ooh, Sue Miller says, chopped and simmered, mixed with beaten egg, shredded Parmigiana cheese, salt, pepper, dash of nutmeg, baked in a pie crust. Okay, now we're talking. Can someone screenshot that for me or something and put it in the comments? Because that would be great. Huh? Because obviously you're talking about kale. Natalie says, when I grew kale, insects were eating it all, slugs and crickets. Not here. It's like the only thing, because if there's better options, maybe if I only grew kale, then they would. But they're like, we'll pass. We'll pass on that stuff. It's called dinosaur kale because you have to be a dinosaur to eat it, right? Heather Fox says, well, what is the best celery for zone 5/6? Now, that's the same zone as me, basically. And so I have had wonderful success year after year with Utah tall. Okay, Utah, like the state, and then tall, like the opposite of short. And so I've had great success with that. However, I am branching out this year. In years past, the giant red has been very successful as well. But that was only 1 year, and so I want to grow it again this year to see. So the Utah, though, grows well, but it's they can be a little bit small, and they can be prone to the hollowness, to that hollow. Even with even watering, they can be prone to the hollow stalk syndrome or whatever it is. So we're just going to see. We're planting Tango and the giant red, and possibly the D'Elney, the French variety, depending on a few things. So we're not doing the Utah this year, so we'll see. Let's see. Let's see, you guys talking about loofah. Oh, Crybaby Sentimental Homestead. I've not seen that name before. It says, I bought a ton of slips last year. Half arrived dead, and I didn't get a harvest because they sent them out so late. Yeah, that can happen. Now, one thing though, with the sweet potato is amazingly resilient. So I've gotten slips, and so if you get slips um, that are even like last year, some of them arrived and they were just like a twig. I mean, they were just like this, no leaves on them. They were just look like a dead little, but it was still green. Root that in water for a few days and it will grow. It's amazing. They're amazingly resilient. Darth X. I think they taste too strong, way too strong, like 10 times the concentration of celery flavor as actual celery, almost like soap. I don't want to put that thought in your head, but I just did. It's live, so I can't take it back. It tastes like soap. Serena Norell says, Nate, have you ever grown blue Adirondack potatoes? Now, actually, is this thing still sounding good? I feel like it's not. What about if I put the sound up here? I might want to connect it up here. What do you think? Is it still sounding good? I don't know. But it's the beard. The beard hides the sound waves, from getting to the mic. So let's see here. 1 second. So the blue Adirondack. Okay, now after I made the last video and I called them the Viking blue potatoes, I went back and saw my purchase order slip, because doing taxes for last year, and they were actually blue Adirondacks. They weren't the purple Vikings. So I think I just liked the name, and that's what stuck in my mind. But they were actually blue Adirondack potatoes, and I do not like them. To me, they are dry and sort of flavorless. And for two, you have to realize how much color, how much visual appeal plays in to the senses. The eyes like to eat too. Remember that. And so how much the visual sense plays into the flavor experience of eating something. So when you've got these blue potatoes, and then you try to prepare them like regular potatoes, and I use boatloads of butter, sour cream, and the like. And so they're just like these, they just look like runny, kind of like this off, half blue, half sort of watered down yellow blue. It just is the weirdest looking thing. And so like, it's like eating Dr. Seuss food. It's like, okay, for Cat in the Hat Day, you can bring your purple potatoes and eat wacky with your green eggs and ham. Ha ha ha. That's about all they're good for, because for actually like preparing like amazing food, to me, they don't do it. Now, maybe there's a particular dish where blue potatoes stand out. I haven't found it. And so I'm not going to grow them again. One that did surprise me though, so even after I made the video the other day, is these, and I believe that these are the banana fingerling. I could be getting the names mixed up. I have to look again. But the French fingerling and the banana fingerling are two that we grew. And Viking Uncle, if you're watching this, if you have more of these, the fingerlings of this color and shape, save them, because we want to plant them. Okay, I'm saving the rest that we have because they are super good. Part of it is just that fingerling potatoes are so good. I mean, they are like a whole different class of potato than like Yukon Gold. Like I said in the video, I'm not even going to grow Yukon Golds again this year, even though they're a great variety that is a solid producer, stores mostly all winter, very disease resistant. They're great. If you're a beginner gardener, grow Yukon Golds. Once you've more perfected your system and you've got experience with stuff though, branch out into the fingerling potatoes. You will be happy that you did. You don't skin them, and they're just so much more dense and buttery and delicious in my experience. So I think these are the banana fingerlings, although the red skin ones might be the banana and these might be the French, I forget. But I'm growing them all. So we're growing German butterball as the round potato. We're growing the definitely the Austrian crescent, which is another fingerling potato. We're growing the French fingerling and the banana fingerling. Yes, because we love potatoes. Contrary to popular belief, potatoes are loaded with vitamins and minerals. They are a really good food to eat. One of the few vegetables that you can survive on just eating potatoes for an extended period of time. If you had to, you don't, but they're full of vitamins and minerals. Melanie's been listening. Says he doesn't like blue. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Let's see here. Oh, definitely. Happy to Run says, I think I'll plant my sweet potatoes straight in my sandy Texas soil this year and cover with row cover so the bunnies don't get them again. Yes. I hope you mean slips, of course. Yes. Queen RB says, my local co-op has so many varieties of sweet potatoes. I would buy slips only if I wanted a kind I couldn't find locally. Yeah, part of it was last year I wanted to see like, okay, what's the big deal? Are they going to perform better? Are they going to, some crazy variety that would just taste so much different and stuff? They just taste like sweet potatoes. All homegrown sweet potatoes are going to be delicious. They just taste like sweet potatoes, and they got scurf, so they're ugly. So there's that. But remember though, and I've had people comment to me that garnet yams are yams. Yams are not sweet potatoes. Get it right. Things like that. But little do they know that most of the things that we call yams here in America are sweet potatoes. Garnet yams are sweet potatoes, actually. A true yam is very different. It's like a woody, the outside is much more woody, almost like looks kind of like a tapioca root, if you've seen those. But they're much more like North African, Southeast Asian, that kind of cuisine would use actual yams, which are a totally different plant. Totally different plant. So garnet yams and stuff, it's actually difficult. You're not going to go to most stores here in America and find an actual yam unless it's an Asian or specialty market. Yeah, North African market or something like that. Then you would, but for us here, they're sweet potatoes. Okay, so just don't trip out on that. Let's see. Beck says, excited for the seed starting refresher. Probably starting onions this weekend in 6A. Yes. Be on the lookout for the seed starting mixture that I've been using the past several years with amazing results. I'm sold on it. Completely sold on it. Especially with how lame the bagged soils have gotten. Has anyone else noticed that? In the past, I'm talking in the past like 3 to 4 years in particular, that they've just gotten super lame, mostly wood chips. When you see on the bag, composted, derived from composted forest floor material. And that makes you think of lush, rich, tropical rainforest, forest floor. Yeah, that's just a fancy marketing way of saying wood chips, okay? So they're just taking wood chips, composting them as fast as they can possibly get it through the process so they can get it out the door and get that money in the bank. That's what they're doing it for. So you will see in the bags of soil now, it's like more and more wood chunks. I used to not really have to sift it. The past handful of years, you have to start sifting it if you want it seed mixed. Until now, it's like you got huge handfuls of wood chips in your bagged potting mixes. Uncomposted wood chips, and that is not good for seed starting. That's a big problem. So I've developed this recipe that is pretty much foolproof. So be on the lookout for that. Happy to Run says, my Viking walking onions are doing amazing throughout the winter. Yes, they will. They will continue to do amazing. They are strong and they will be there all season long, definitely. But experiment with eating them, okay? That you can eat them at any stage along the way. There is a particular time once the stalk gets so thick that it starts to have bulbils, then it's too fibrous. Okay, so you need to experiment with eating the leaves along the way. So just experiment with eating the whole plant. It's amazing. Sue Miller says, I am keeping alive this winter my sweet potato slips that I didn't plant last year. Not sure if it will work. It can, definitely, yes. That's why sweet potatoes are something that we can start really early, because you can just you can let the vines grow nice and long, and then you can essentially clone them like we do these, like we would these plants. We'll take the vine, cut it off, cut 2 nodes, and root the nodes in a cup of water or even in soil, and let the vine grow. So one vine can make 4 slips. You see what I mean? So I'm experimenting this year. I'm going to actually do it and then root the slips in a 2x2 cube. And I'm going to root each one of them first. Because if you guys are planting sweet potatoes, then you know that if you plant the bare root slip, then you will you have to be on the watering. You have to make sure they are saturated for the first like 2 weeks. And they'll sit there for like what seems like a month and not do anything, just sit there. But they're really putting down roots and everything. But then there will come a point when they're just like, all right, go time. And they start and they grow and they prolifically sprawl everywhere. I want to see if I can shorten that time. Yeah, I want to see if I can make it so that they're rooted in 2x2 bootstrap farmer trays, pots, and then plant those in the garden if they will have less time of being down, of being where they just kind of, they just sit there, and they'll fall over and they'll just look all dehydrated. Like, what are you doing to me? But then all of a sudden they're like, just kidding, boom, and start growing really big and vigorous. So I want to see if I can transition that period. Yeah. Yes, evolving process. You also have to watch because of your specific situation. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Let's see here. Let me catch up on the chat here. I think I'm way, way, way behind. Yeah, hundreds of comments behind. What's up, Simplified Gardening? Good to see you here, my friend. Yes. Let's see here. Tons of good comments in here. Okay. Serena says, Nate, during this fake spring, should I go ahead and start broccoli outside or wait and start them inside? What zone are you in again? Remember, broccoli is tough. Broccoli can be tough if you are like a place like northern Indiana where we have wild temperature swings. Broccoli wants more like, think Pacific Northwest, where it's temperate, where degrees change like by the single digits, at a time. Where here in the springtime, we can have 85-degree day and a 45-degree night, a huge 40-degree, swing in 24 hours. And so that will cause spinach, broccoli, cauliflower to bolt. That they'll just say, what is going on? So I don't grow those anymore. You should grow them in the fall because they don't want to ripen when they are getting hot. Very few of the things like cabbages, collard greens, well, not collards, but Brussels sprouts and broccoli, cauliflower, they like to ripen as it's getting cooler. They'll be sweeter, more flavorful, more tender, just better all the way around. Yeah. So oh my goodness. Be About It Farm says, I'll take kale over Swiss chard any day of the week. That's just blasphemous. Tony suggests lime the ground for all brassicas. How much and when and why? I mean, I know why, but Okay, so let's see here. Yes, Happy to Run says, I wish I could get cabbage to grow to maturity. The heat zaps them every time. I have grown cauliflower successfully in the past, but it took about 9 months. Ooh, yeah. So guys, the thing this year, okay. So for the indoor seed starting setup, now we have not really gotten into lighting and stuff like that because I didn't want to overwhelm people, like, so when I left Northern California, I mean, I was really up on like the PAR rating, the PAR rating of the lights, the photosynthetic photon flux, and then the flux density and things like that. You have to really pay attention to that kind of stuff when you're really growing indoors. But for most of seed starters, that doesn't really matter. It's not going to matter that much. But I'm going to touch on that. When I do the seed starting setup, I want to touch on that because I've got my PAR meter. And so it can easily show us the amount of usable light that is reaching the plants. Okay. So, because a lot of people, when I talk about you don't need actual grow lights, you can use shop lights, and I say use this specific, 4 to 5,000 Kelvin and as many lumens as you can get, 15, 20,000 lumens. I've had so many comments, especially on Instagram, saying, who wants to tell this guy lumens doesn't mean anything to plants? That's just a measurement of how intense it is to our light, to human eyes, which that in itself is true. But you can loosely correlate that a certain Kelvin and a certain lumens will have a certain level of intensity. If you have enough experience, you know this. So I'm going to prove that because I have actual grow lights downstairs, Mars Hydro 3000s from years ago. I would never buy those for seed starting. But I have those lights, and which we can crank up, to 1,400 UMols per meter squared per second. Yeah. And so that's like the sun, basically, or more intense. And then we will use shop lights, and I will show you the differences between the shop lights, okay? So, and it really matters. So like right here, 3.5, okay? Now, I'm going to just angle it towards the window. Let me get a hold value. What's that say? See, 10.8, okay? So that I was just holding it. So that matters how much it's, look. So if I turn it the other way, barely anything at all away from the light, 0.79 UMol. So that's why all these plants, they will angle their leaves towards the light source because they're consuming way more. So now let me see if I put it right next to the window. Let's see here. I'll hold 79 UMols per meter squared per second. So I can explain that stuff in layman's terms to people. It's actually really simple. It's just but it's a wonderful measurement to know. These meters aren't much. And so I'm going to explain in the video how you can easily use this to know how to position your light and to know how much distance matters. So if you've got a light, you will see with the meter, and I'll explain what it means in depth in the video in layman's terms. But you will see that the distance that the light is away from the canopy dramatically influences the amount of photosynthetically active radiation that the plant is receiving in a given amount of space, the ppfd, yeah? The photosynthetic photon flux density, okay? So, we could nerd out on that stuff for a long time, but I let all that go when I left Northern California, but it's still useful. It's still really useful to know. So, because it helps you to position, and especially, and it will show you why putting things in a window, even a south-facing window, is not adequate. A lot of times, it's not adequate, and I'll show you the differences. And this will also prove why you can use shop lights, because the only thing that this thing measures is the photosynthetically active radiation, meaning only the spectrum that the plants can use, not just the spectrum that we see, which is actually, if you look at the light spectrum, it's a huge long spectrum, and just a little tiny smear of that is what we can see and is what plants can use. It's incredible. Yeah. So there's all of that. Let me know if you guys want to see more videos like that. But we are definitely going to do a seed starting one here coming up where we will discuss what that means. Yeah, what U-moles means and what these measurements mean. The given amount, the millions of photons that are reaching a given amount of area per second. It's pretty awesome once you start understanding all this stuff. Wow. And then you also can understand how perfect the sun and the outside natural world really is, and how difficult it is to replicate that indoors, and the massive amount of resources that are actually required to do that effectively. And then we can also use this meter to see about our shade-loving plants. Okay, so you can actually see, you can use the meter to see, is this spot too shaded? You can leave it there and you can get a running average over 6 hours or whatever, and it will give you an average. So I can tell you how to interpret those things if you want. So it's really fun to get to know that. And this thing was like 80 bucks, you know, but I used to have a much more sensitive, much more expensive one than this, but this one will work. I've been playing around with it for the past couple weeks, and it's totally adequate. Jason Hetty, is that meter in your storefront? It is, yes. Look at the indoor growing equipment, and you can get this meter. This is the best. I've had cheaper ones, and I didn't trust them. This one I can trust, and it's got a hole to mount to a tripod. So if you want to really get serious about maximizing the efficiency of not only your grow room, your seed starting setup, but your outdoor growing, and you've got shade and stuff like that, get you one of these, put it on a tripod, and put it on the mode set to check the average, okay? So that you will be able to see, okay. So see, there's a certain equation. It's how many U-moles, okay, per meter per squared per second over a given photo period divided by like 0.00036, okay? It's an equation. But this will give you how many, it's called the DLI, the something light interval. I forget what that stands for, but it's basically a measurement of how much light per photo period per day the plant is going to receive. That will tell you right away if you can grow certain plants here and there, you know, and how effective that area will be. Yeah. It can also tell you if you're getting too much light. For some of my Northern California growers, okay, the number one problem in an indoor garden when you're trying to fruit and flower is too much light. They want to blast it with light, especially back in the day of high pressure sodium lights. Just, you see, it's just like the sun in there. They got 48,000 watts of, you know, diesel generator running nonstop 24/7, all these lights and everything, huge amounts of energy. And it's like just super blazing hot, you know. LEDs have changed the whole game, okay? But it's awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you, someone. I totally was not seeing the super chats. Okay, I'm gonna start right here. Teats Treats. If I use the granular fertilizer, my soil food web will die off. When I add my compost to my beds, will food soil web come back, or do I need to reset? You're not talking about the Viking granular fertilizer, are you? Because the Viking granular fertilizer will nourish the life in the soil. It will absolutely bolster the life in the soil. It's got things that are meant to do that. Not only does it have a endo and ecto mycorrhizal inoculant in it, it has a well, several other things that would do that. But if you're talking about that one stuff that we talked about, the chemical fertilizers, you know, it doesn't totally die it off, kill it off, but yes, adding the compost to your beds is always beneficial. Compost is really about the best thing that you could ask for. I mean, compost, properly made compost is enough. You can grow in compost and water, basically. There's things, in my opinion and experience, that can definitely bolster even more the growth. But you should be fine. What you need to do, though, is make some aerated compost teas, definitely. If you're trying to get that life back in the soil and everything, and it's just kind of died off because of the chemicals you've been using and stuff, get the compost in there, the habitat for the microbes, but then you know, they need excessive, almost excessive amounts of microbes. Okay, yes. So I hope that answered it. Taylor Reindahl. Member for 4 months. Guys, we've had memberships going already 4 months. That's crazy. Seems like just the other day. Is it time to start ginger? What zone are you in? Are you in the same zone as here? Are you local? I forget. So it can be time to start ginger. Now, I used to start ginger about now, yes, because it takes a long time. But once you get your seed starting set up more in line, you don't really need to worry about it as much because it grows fast. So you remember 2 years ago when I was showing you guys the 10, 20 trays with ginger that was this tall indoors? And I was like, guys, it's like 3 feet tall. You know, it's got a little bit too big. When I put that stuff outside, it roasted in the sun. Okay. It was too hard to transition it to the outside, because it grew past the grow lights. You know, I couldn't raise the grow lights 4 feet tall because then the par would disperse too much to the other plants. So I just had to let it grow past the grow lights until it was in shade. So last year I started about, so middle of May. So we count back 10 weeks and that's it. Okay. Mine's the middle of May. We count back 10 weeks. Now we use a heat mat, and we don't even use a thermometer on the heat mat for the ginger. You can let that stuff just get roasting hot. That will break its dormancy much faster, okay? So let's see if you answered. Okay, Colorado 5B. When is your last frost date? Probably similar to us, so middle of May. So I would say March, all of April. So I would say about March 1st, yeah. You could start it now. You could, but understand it's going to get big. It could potentially get too big. So anytime this month, we'll say anytime this month will be fine. But if at the end of the time when you have to plant it is going to be like March, okay? So thank you for the contribution, my friend. Grow all year. $10. Thank you for the contribution. It says, Nate, came across some year-old Jerusalem artichoke, garlic, and hot pepper JDOM herbal solution I made based off of one of your videos. With JWA, seems to have been the magic bullet against fungus gnats on my hydro peppers. Really nice. In the fungus gnats in your hydroponically grown peppers. Well, that's pretty cool, though. Yeah, so it would be the JWA in that. The Jerusalem artichoke, the garlic, the hot pepper, that is general pest deterrent, definitely. Especially the garlic and the hot pepper, the Jerusalem artichoke as well. But the actual really active ingredient that will actually dissolve and melt the larva of the fruit flies and the fungus gnats is the JWA. Yes, it will. So that's good to know. Thank you very much. And hopefully you still have some. That's why we can that stuff. We can it. Once you boil it, can it. And it will last indefinitely, basically. Yeah. Let's see here. Paulus Armstrong says, I'm trying hydroponics this year. Any thoughts? Guys, what do you think we're going to say about that? Thank you very much for the $5, my friend. I appreciate the contribution. Now, on this channel, we don't really get into hydroponics because I've done hydroponics over the years, back in the day especially. And if you have very specific goals, it can be worthwhile. But if you're trying to grow the most nutrient-dense food, then hydroponics is not what you want. I know, because we need that soil food web. Hydroponics is much less forgiving than soil. It does have its strengths. If you have to grow like in an indoor environment, still soil is nice, is best, but hydroponics can be useful, yes. In which case, I sort of recommend, if you're going full on hydroponics, I recommend just going the chemical route, because you like the master blend, or the various grow mores, because you run the risk, otherwise trying to use these homemade things, you don't have the power of the soil food web in there. So you really run the risk of your reservoir just turning rancid, okay? Of your reservoir turning rancid, and the things won't work, because even things like the fish fertilizer and stuff still require soil microorganisms. So in hydroponics, you're just better off, if you want to go organic, grow in soil, or soil that's growing, peat moss and stuff. Grow in media, we'll call it. If you want the fastest things possible, and sometimes the biggest things possible, the heaviest things possible, hydro. If speed and weight are your goal, then hydro is the way to go. But if quality is your goal and nutrient density, media, soil food web, all the way. Rob, $5. Thank you very much, my friend. Clower, is that how you say that last name? Haven't seen that one here before. Welcome. Says Nate, what would happen if you cooked your fish scraps before using it to make the JDOM fish fertilizer? Now, I wouldn't do this, just because we want to utilize the I would want to utilize the bacteria that is already on the fish proteins. And when you cook the fish proteins, the flesh, it changes the composition of the fish big time. You can tell when you cook as opposed to raw fish. So while I'm sure you can make it from that, I wouldn't. But if you have to, then sure, go ahead. I mean, that's how they make fish emulsion, is they just boil everything, grind up the fish, boil everything, remove all the good fish oils and all the beneficial stuff. They make skincare products, they make fish oil capsules, they make all kinds of stuff out of it. And then the waste that's left, they then add enzymes and stuff like that to the sludge. And then that's what fish emulsion basically is. It has been really cooked. So it works. My senses tell me that the raw fish is superior product. Yeah, especially if you're making the K&F style with the brown sugar, which is the one that I actually recommend most to people if you've got the time, because it takes the longest of all of them to break down, but it produces the best results. Okay, the best results. Equal parts by weight, raw fish scraps of any kind, and brown sugar. Mix it together, let it digest. 6 months to a year, everything will be liquefied, and that's the finest fish supplement that there is. Definitely. JDOM is still really good as well, though. But you've got that smell with the JDOM. It really doesn't go away. That putrid stench of death. So sorry, but I would not be doing that. If you had to, it's acceptable. Let's see here. Whoops. Let me make sure. I will get back to those starred comments here in just a moment, or to the. Oh, okay. Here's another one. Steve-O, $5. Thank you very much, my friend. So let's see here. It says, hey Nate, did you talk about ion seedling yet? Mine are growing slow. Have some yellowing tips of some. Did you talk about ion seedling yet? You probably mean onion seedlings. Did you mean onion seedlings? I think you did. Let's see. You probably did. So I will just go with that. So onion seedlings. Now mine, I've just started. So what zone are you in that you would have onion seedlings that tall already? Okay. I heard some people talk about, I want to start some people in my same zone talking about starting them the 1st of January. I was like, what? That just seems extraordinarily early. But if you've got everything right, like the heat and the humidity and the lighting and stuff, even right now is pretty early. So if they're growing slow, that typically happens. Don't worry. Are they on a heat mat? What's the lighting like? Yeah. What kind of lights are you using? And if you had a meter, I would say, what is the par value? Well, I mean, what is the, how many umol per meter squared per second are they receiving? That's not really that important though. But what is important as far as yellowing probably is the watering. You probably, when the root tips tend to die, the polar opposite of the plant tends to express that first. So you will see that you probably either let them get super bone dry so that those fine little root hairs died, and then you watered them again. Once they die, once those fine little root hairs die, and if you look at a healthy root, it is just full of like tiny little root hairs. See, here's a half a tray of wheatgrass that I, grow. So let's see here. Let's see if we can. Well, oh yeah, okay. Well, see, let's see if we can look at this any closer. So there is like really, see how the roots kind of look hairy? Do you see that? How they look kind of fuzzy? I mean, this isn't a real good picture of it, but the roots look kind of fuzzy, like they're made of like cotton, and those are actually tiny little root hairs that are really important to the absorption of nutrients. Okay, those thicker ones are what transport water and help to secure the plant. But the real fine little root hairs are what transport nutrients in particular. And so when those die off, they don't grow, they have to totally renew. They have to grow again. So they don't just come back to life, So a lot of growers, and I will see this a lot of growers will be afraid of overwatering. And so they will underwater. And so underwatering is just as bad as overwatering. And so when you let these little root hairs die out, then you will experience that yellow tips. Yeah? Let's see here. You'll experience the yellowing tips, along with many other problems. But I'm trying to show you this because I want you guys to get a good idea of this, and that kind of sparks my idea for a new video, actually. But if you can see how it's just kind of fuzzy, and that's what you want. That's what you want, is nice fuzzy white roots. And so if they are yellow or brown, no good, because that means that they have died off and they are going to have to spend all kinds of energy to actually regrow again. They're not just going to come back to life. So that's why it's very important to know how to water correctly. So watch the video that I made about water like a pro. It didn't do very well. The video, it's probably the title and thumbnail, because that's the only thing that seems to matter with the performance of any video. It's the title and thumbnail. But the information in there took me years to understand, and it perfects your watering. It perfects your watering. It's a video I made, I think last year, maybe 2 years ago, about water like a pro. And I teach you how to water by weight, by feel. You don't look, and you'll hear a lot of people, well, stick your finger in it, and when the top 320 millimeters is, dry, then water with blah, blah, blah. All that kind of stuff, in my opinion, is sort of amateur. The way to do by trays is by feel. And once you understand the technique that I do in that video, you will know. You can just walk into your grow room. I used to have to do thousands and thousands of plants in Northern California. So I had to know how to just walk into the grow room and lift up each tray. And I would know, I would get that muscle memory. So I would know, okay, and I would water, give it just the right amount by feel. That's how you do it. Do it by feel. That's the only way to truly tell. Not about when the top looks dry or when your moisture meter tells you this or tells you that. You want to do it by feel when we're talking about trays. Believe me, that is how you do thousands and thousands of them in a time sensitive manner. Okay, so we got one more starred here, and I will but I want to see if anyone is saying anything super important right now. Bob D, that was my that was my thought too. Shouldn't be getting fungus gnats in hydro. Right, that was my thing too. How you getting fungus gnats in hydro? Unless you mean aeroponics. Let's see here. Right, they need soil, right, yes. Let's see here. Nick the Gardener, yes. Man, I want to see that potato. I want to see how you're cloning them potatoes. Have it in mind to make a full year video about it, you know? How you're, I mean, I get how you're doing it, but I want to see it. It would be really cool. How you're growing all those potatoes from the single one, yeah? Let us see. Yes, I agree, my friend. Yeah. VA Green says hydroponics work or organic gardening is better, in my opinion. Stay loyal to the soil. That's right, guys. For the most part, nature's not growing hydroponically, you know, and so we can just, like I said, unless you've got very particular goals and specific parameters, in a few situations, hydro makes sense. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. It's not the don't even get me started. I'm not even going to get started on a rant about indoor vertical farming, how it's being sold to people, and the total delusion that that's the way of the future, and in any way superior to what nature's already perfected for thousands and thousands of years, the soil. So I'm not going to get into it anymore right now. I will eventually. JB, $5. Thank you very much, my friend. Says, last year was the first attempt at onions and got maggots. How long until I should try another crop? And is it too late to start in Maryland Zone 7? Maryland is Zone 7? You must be coastal, right? So you got the onion maggots. Now, that will come from weak plants, really. It's so if that was your first attempt at maggots or you're at onions, what I would do is I would saturate the soil in some BT. Really, I would add some BT and or some JDOM wetting agent, the Castile soap, that can really, because that will dissolve them. I think the BT would work on them. I really do, because they're a caterpillar. I mean, they're like a. I don't know if it would or not. I'm not entirely sure yet, but that would be the first thing that I would try if I got them. I do remember having them at one point, but they don't. It's not like Symphyllans where once you have them, you know, forever. It's you basically can cure that, definitely. So you could cure that with several things. Number one would be just growing very healthy plants and sulfur the soil a little bit beforehand. Alliums love a little bit of sulfur, elemental sulfur sprinkled throughout there. That's going to really help to ensure that they've got the nice pungent sulfuric compounds that will be able to deter most pests. So I can't say exactly because there's lots of other factors that could have came into play there. But that's my initial thoughts. Let's see. Yeah, Reefer Madman, General Hydroponics. Yeah, that Gen Hydro, that's stuff we used to use as well, definitely. It's pretty much industry standard. Yes, yes. Okay. Let's see here. Big West, any good suggestions on getting organic seed for microgreens for worm food? I'm looking for the most nutritious grass to pad up and put in the bins. Yeah, that cool video I saw you sent me, and that is definitely possible. It's essentially wheatgrass, just like I have here, like I've been growing. And my favorite supplier is the True Leaf. You can get them in a 35-pound bucket for like $100. Okay, that will last a long time, considering this only takes a cup and a half. All right, and you wouldn't even need to do it this dense if you weren't juicing it, if you were just giving it to the worms, you know. But what I would do is, if I had worms, I would juice the top still, and I would feed the pad to the worms, because if you can see, ooh, let's see here, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm juicing this stuff anyways. But look, you see that thick pad of roots underneath? I mean, it is a thick mat of roots, and they will love to eat that stuff. And you can still juice the wheatgrass first, and then you can put that pad in there, and that would be really good for them to eat, because they'll love these roots, no doubt. It's like 5 times thicker on the other side. These just came through those little tiny holes, but it's way thicker on the other side. All right. So True Leaf Market, that's what I would do, definitely. DLR says, I'd prefer to use an indoor grow tent versus hydroponics for growing food in winter. Yes, well, they're actually not mutually exclusive, though. I mean, in my experience, you can do hydro in an indoor grow tent, but I get what you're saying, and that's what I do. I mean, we grow microgreens and we grow sprouts all winter long. This is fenugreek and radishes and crimson clover. It's a mixture of the three. Super delicious, fresh food all summer or winter long. Yeah. And we just cut it up with the microgreens. We'll mix some microgreens, we'll mix some sprouts, cut them up, and then make a dressing, okay? Make a dressing. This dressing is super delicious, okay? A tablespoon of malt vinegar, a tablespoon of honey, and a tablespoon of malt vinegar, teaspoon of Dijon mustard, like the fermented homemade kind, a teaspoon of honey, and about a quarter of a cup of maple syrup, or I mean of olive oil. Okay, if that wasn't confusing enough, if you can decipher that, that's the best dressing that I have found for microgreens and sprouts. Is that right there? It's malt vinegar, honey, Dijon mustard, and olive oil. Super delicious. Yes. Ooh, Serena, look at that with them gardening jokes. What do soil scientists read to get their news? The compost. Good one. Yes. Miller, can the fish scraps have bone and heads? Thanks in advance. Absolutely. Yes. Any part of the fish. That's what's amazing. You can eat the flesh if you would like. Although, let me say, if you are making the fish amino acids, the one with the brown sugar, it's best to just do the whole fish, because you want that good proteins in there. Although you can just use the scraps. But what's best to do is go and get like some invasive fish, like the Asian carp that populate these rivers around here. Those, because you only need a few of those, and nobody likes those, and you don't really eat those. But you can take that flesh and digest it for your fertilizer. Okay. Yeah. Big Will Dog says, in my garden, seeds seem pretty good. I think most is heirloom, but not sure on how much is actually organic. You can grow the seed organically before feeding. Yeah, the organic thing for seeds is kind of not really that relevant. As long as it's heirloom or open pollinated, as long as it's, or even F1 or whatever, even hybrids, so long as it's not GMO, genetically modified, in the sense that we're talking, okay? All hybrids, all the stuff we grow in the garden is in some form or another modified. Its genetics have been modified through breeding and cultural practices. We're talking about laboratory genetic modification, okay? Which is different, gene splicing and things like that. So, but for seeds, it actually doesn't really matter that much, because it all matters on how you grow it. So getting certified organic seeds is not important to me. Getting heirloom or getting the proper seeds are important. Mostly hybrids. You got to understand, if you want to grow hybrids, you have to understand why you're growing them and what the results are going to be. Yeah, you're not going to save seeds from them. Yeah. So it all depends on how you grow them. Crybaby Sentimental Homestead says, I sometimes give my plants in soil a little molasses in their water, and it seems to give them a boost. Have you used molasses? Oh yes, I've definitely used molasses. I used it as a food source for microorganisms in certain ferments and in the aerated compost tea. That's where I found that it's best. Because if you add too much of it to your soil, it can confuse, this is putting it in layman's terms, it can confuse the root exudate and soil microbe relationship, okay? Because everything is sugars in the soil and the interaction of the plants. If you're adding too much artificial sugars to the actual soil that are not digested through microorganisms first, you can throw this balance off. Also, you can remember this, too much molasses will attract aphids. You will get aphids if you're using too much molasses. But if you use it properly in the aerated compost teas, all the minerals are still there. All the benefits of the molasses are still there. It's just locked up temporarily in the bodies of the microorganisms. But once they die off, it will be perfectly plant available. So that's the best way to use it, in my opinion and experience, is as a food source for the microbes in the aerated compost tea or in something like the fish hydrolysate. Yeah, I never ever just apply molasses to the garden or the soil. Let's see here. Yes. Let's see here. Steve-O says, yeah, hearsay. Grow lights close up, 3 inches. It depends on your grow lights. If you've got the Gavita, what is it? The Gavita Pro 1700s or like the Mars Hydro 3000s SP, 3 inches is going to be scorching your plants. That's for sure, unless you've got it toned way down. But if you're using things like, that's why you see like microgreen farmers that have those, those light strips of the LEDs and stuff. They have to be like literally almost touching the plant, because any further and that light dissipation just goes away. The photosynthetically active radiation just disperses with distance. That's why the old high pressure sodiums, man, we used to be able to have those things like 6 feet above the plants, and it was still like roasting the plants and stuff. So it was they need to be able to grow to be able to handle that. But for seed starting, we don't need to worry about any of those things. Most lights, yeah, you will want to put very close to the plant. Yeah, so that's pretty much right. Oh, absolutely. Bob D says, an outdoor plant in the dirt will outgrow a hydro plant all day, and the terpenes and flavonoids are higher in a sun-grown soil crop than hydro. Absolutely. If we're talking outdoors, there is nothing finer than in soil. Absolutely. Cannot even compare. That's why I said the only places where hydro might be advantageous is in certain situations indoors. Yes, I heard this. R.I.P. Rest in peace, Master Cho, the founder of the KNF movement. So, yes, passed away a few weeks ago. I remember this. Yes, let us take a moment of silence for the legend. Yes. I agree. VA Green says lots of minerals in molasses. Definitely. Absolutely. Ooh, Nick the Gardener says, hi, Nate. I'm going to add clay to my compost. to help its longevity, and because I have mainly silt and sandy soil at my allotment, and to help the cation exchange capacity. Can you explain cation exchange capacity, please? Yes, I definitely can, but let us have that discussion next week because we got 5 minutes left. That's not enough time. I got to give perspective. I got to give, we got to have perspective, some background, some analogies, some comparison, because that's very important, the cation exchange capacity of the media. So, and then we will talk about things that we can do to help that, yeah? And why that's important. Humic acids, fulvic acids, what they do. Let's definitely talk about that in depth next week. Maybe I would make a video about that, but that might be a little bit too specific for most people. Most people aren't gonna be into that. Prodigal Gardener says, how do you dilute the molasses? If you watch my aerated compost tea recipe, I like for a 55-gallon drum, I'll use anywhere from a cup to a cup and a half, something like that, depending on how much fish fertilizer I'm using. So I'll put the cup of molasses in a mason jar like this, and then I will pour boiling water over it, stir it up real good. That totally dilutes it, so that I've got that 1 cup diluted into a liter, and then I'll pour the liter into the cold or the ambient temperature aerated compost tea. That is how I dilute that stuff. Because if you just straight pour that into the compost tea, it's just going to sink to the bottom and sit there on the ground, sit there on the bottom for a long time. You want to dilute it with hot water first. Yeah. And don't worry, we're not concerned about the microorganisms in the molasses. So boiling water is not going to affect anything. VA Green, tell me you didn't watch the video without telling me you didn't watch the video. Nick says, cation exchange capacity boggles me. I can definitely explain that in easy terms next week, all right? Yes, guys, hit the like button. Christina says, you're supposed to trim the onion tops. Don't have to, but it's better, I believe. Yes, watch my videos on this, please, because I always trim the onion tops. When they get to about 8 inches, we want to tip it to the side, trim them off back to about 5 inches. Let them grow to about 8, 9 inches again, trim them off again. Every time that we trim them off, we want to foliar spray with something like a fish fertilizer or a worm compost, a worm juice tea, a worm casting tea, or the ultimate seedling fertilizer from either of the previous 2 videos I've made about that. The ultimate seedling fertilizer would be the best, and foliar with that, or just overhead shower it. All right. Most of the time, we're always bottom watering, but after we cut them, we want to foliar. All right. That definitely helps, and that will make them stalkier. That will make them focus more on producing more leaves. That will, it's just better all the way around. Yeah, because some years I didn't trim them and they just get so big and they flop over and they just kind of become, there's a bunch of dying plant material and stuff, and they become real thin, like a piece of spaghetti, like a piece of angel hair spaghetti. You want them to be at least, like this, at least, preferably more like a pencil thickness. So, I mean, ideally they're going to be more like this, that thick at least is what we want. Oh, here we go. Am I that far behind in the comments? Says Nate, I suggest powdering a 1/4 cup of bits per 2 to 4 gallons of soil. Once the bacteria populates, it keeps itself growing and active. Okay, so, making sure you see this. So you probably posted it before. Okay, 1/4 cup of bits per 2 to 4 gallons of soil mix. So let's see here. If we're doing 10, so that'd be, so a cup and a half. Okay, I get it. Okay, very good. I will do that. Although if you're getting fungus gnats, for the most part, it's because you're overwatering or you have not enough airflow or there's other problems. But if these other things, whatever they are, I'm not even sure, don't seem to be phased at all. They're not feeding off the fungus. They're feeding off something else. I think just the plant roots is what they're feeding off of. So yeah. Okay, Teets, good. Watching the synthetic. Okay, yeah, definitely. I think we got that taken care of. Serena says, Nate, what are your thoughts on seed potatoes and seed sweet potatoes from Sam's Club? What should I look for when buying them? So when you're saying seed potatoes, you're not talking about actual like certified seed potato. I don't think Sam's Club is selling seed potatoes, are they? You're just talking about potatoes you will then buy and then turn into seeds or plant. You really don't need to look for anything. You just need to look for, I mean, just make sure that they're nice and firm, and that they're not rotten. And I mean, really, just pick the most beautiful ones. That's really it. Because you're gonna chit them, and you're gonna sprout the slips off of the other sweet potatoes. So always try to get the organic ones, though. Definitely, always try to get the organics. The other ones can have a sprout inhibitor sort of sprayed on them because they don't want them sprouting because they have to last so long, on the market. But not really much, yeah. So let's see here. Crybaby says, you eat crimson clover? I wasn't sure it was edible. I knew red and white clover. Our crimson clover makes a beautiful garden plant, and pollinators love the flowers. They love it. Crimson clover is my favorite cover crop to grow. We barely can grow it here, though, because sometimes it's only hardy to like 10 degrees or maybe 0 degrees. I forget. And I think we already passed that this year, but we had snow on the ground. So hopefully the crimson clover plot at the Viking North garden is fine. But we're only eating the microgreens. So they only sprout to be, they're only like 5 days. And then we eat the microgreens. We don't eat the actual plant. Yeah. Let me see if I missed any starred. Okay. So, man, tons of good comments. I'm going to have to read through these later and stuff. I would love to just keep on going. Guys, make sure that you hit the thumbs up. If you've got video ideas you would like to see this spring, let me know. Put it in the comments, okay? Join the Discord chat. If you're not already on the Viking Discord chat, there's a link in the description. Be a part of that community. It's free and it's full of good knowledge. At this point, there's tons of useful information on there. So join that community, okay? And also, if you're shopping on Amazon, do it through the link in the description. Just go down and see the Viking storefront, click on that, bookmark it, and then anytime you shop on Amazon, enter it through there. And anytime that browser window is up, purchase your things in that browser window, whatever they are. It doesn't even matter if they're in the Viking storefront. We will get the credit for it, okay? So that helps us to keep high quality videos coming, free of like unnecessary sponsorships and stuff like that. So that helps us to do all of that, okay? So that would be very helpful. VA Green said, oh, I've watched the video, yeah, but it's been a while since I'll have to brush back up on it. I got you. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we use molasses. The fish hydrolysate is the one with molasses, and it makes it digest so much faster. Yeah. Man, so many comments. I just want to keep answering them, but we got to cap it at some point, okay? So, wow, I did not know that. Serena says Sam's Club has paper bags with actual seed potatoes in 4 varieties to a bag and sweet potatoes. Never knew that. Just go ahead and get them. Yep, go ahead and get them. You want to look at the maturation date, though, because like Yukon Golds or Red New Orleans are real fast, okay? They can be, I think like Tony would call them first earlies, maybe. They got to, like, it's confusing, their system to me. But for us, those would be fast maturing varieties, yeah, early. And then they might have longer ones, like if there's German butterballs or russet potatoes, like russet Burbanks, those can sometimes be 100 days, 120 days for German butterballs. So as opposed to like 65, 75 days for Yukon Golds and Red New Orleans, you know, it makes a big difference. So be on the lookout for that. Okay. Oh, Nick the Gardener says, "What is Discord?" It's like a chat room with pictures and everything just for the Viking community. It's amazing. There's a link in the description of this video to get into that, and there's tons of useful knowledge. You would definitely be a good addition to that community because you're full of firsthand experience and knowledge. Yeah. So that would be great. Yeah. Tony would also be a good, a great resource to the Viking Discord community. Full of good knowledge. So, oh, okay. Simplified Gardening says, yeah, first and second early, same as determinants there. Main crop here are your indeterminates. Ah, okay. So like the German butterball would be considered main crop then. And the, so first earlies would be like a red Norland, real fast. And then maybe second earlies would be like a Yukon Gold, like a 75 days, something like that. Yeah, I mean, I just assume that that system is good, you know, because the American system of doing things are really. MB says, can we still get Viking granular fertilizer 5-gallon bucket? Absolutely. I haven't even begun selling them yet. So I've got the fertilizer license is in the work, and the website is all in the works. It's all happening, but I have to do it that way, you know, this year. I can't just have it, hey, everybody just hit me up. And so it was too disheveled, too disorganized. So this year, but yes, I've got thousands of pounds of the stuff in the shop. Okay. So it's happening. I mean, regardless of anything, I'm selling it this year. So, but I want to get the license and the website and all that first. But no matter what, within the next month, we'll be selling 5-gallon buckets of it, shipped to you guys anywhere in the continental US. We will ship it to you guys. And so for most gardens, 1 5-gallon bucket would be enough for the whole season. And it's a 1-part thing. So you just sprinkle it into the beds. That's literally all we're using from now on here. You know, this is, it's a proof garden now, you know, so it's literally all we're using. So you will see this year. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we got to cut it all at some point. And so we will see you next week, and we will see the Thrive Tribe on the Nate Muri channel every Monday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time for a totally different kind of experience. But thank you guys, and we will see you next time. Look at that. Got it. That's right, Sam. You got that.